So let me tell you about this, and maybe it'll spark the topic of our show if you don't already have one.
Go ahead.
Do you have one
Go ahead.
already? Don't make me feel bad. Say you came in here blank.
Go ahead.
Ah, knew it.
You're good.
So I went to I went to a job fair. We hosted
Okay.
YSU hosted a job fair.
Yeah.
We went in there with Youngstown Computers, see if we can get into these new prospects right out of college. And I'll tell you, like when I interview people right out of college and people who have been in the workforce, it's night and day. Like they are so hopeful and so optimistic.
Oh, yeah.
And they like no one has told them of impossibilities yet.
Yep.
But then people get jaded as time goes on, and
Big
they get
time.
more and more convinced that impossibilities exist. And I was like wondering how you get people back to have those virgin eyes and those, go ahead. What do you think can get people back to that?
I don't know if you can. There's a reason. There's a scripture, Joe.
Early on in the show,
Early on.
we're already scripturing.
The Bible says, above all else, guard your heart, because out of it flow all the issues of life. And can a heart be, reintroduced to innocence? Sure. But that is a process that not many people are willing to go through. And so once you've grown cold and jaded and all that, it's really going to take a supernatural kind of shift in your mindset, heart. Something's got to come along that really shakes you out of that. And I'll say it from my perspective. So I came into youth ministry, and I'm pretty optimistic as it is. And I came in even more idealistic and optimistic, like we're taking over the world, like let's go.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I had several well-meaning pastors in their 40s, 50s, and 60s that have been doing it for a while. And, I would get frustrated. Like, I don't understand. Like, you can't just, and you're just not committed. I'd be so frustrated because it was just like, well, we'll cancel this or we'll change. And it was all laissez-faire with certain things, or I would get real frustrated because, somebody would make a negative comment about something that would throw me sour for a whole day. I'm talking when I'm like 20, 21, 22, like just fresh out of Bible school. And I remember I had two different pastors. They were both older, and something would happen that a plan would blow up in your face, or a project that you were working on would fail. And they were well-meaning, but they put their arm around you, or come into your office and you'd be frustrated or upset or whatever. And they would say, well, welcome to the ministry. Like, this is just what to expect. Right. People aren't going to show up like that. People aren't going to be committed like that. People aren't going to give like that. People aren't going to serve like that. Just get used to it, pal. Yeah. Was kind of the thing. And I can remember in my office, that made my blood boil the first time somebody ever, told me like, oh, you just, failure's part of the deal, get used to it. People don't respond, you got all your ideals, and I'm like, if anybody should have ideals, it should be us. Like, right. The last time I checked, we believe we serve the God of heaven, and all that. You've heard my shtick on the platform and stuff, but I'm sure that those men and women serving in ministry all those years weren't that way when they came out of Bible school, but they got burned by a churchgoer, they got burned by this person, and you allow that to become the narrative. And I find for myself, it's fine for it to be the picture. It's tough when it becomes the movie. And I think that's the hard part for people. It's one thing to go, yep, that thing sucked, but I can move on and do this. It's another thing when everything sucks, And I just think that for a lot of those young students coming out, they haven't had too many of those moments. And so the reel is short. It's why, Jesus says, unless you become like a little child, you can't come to me. There's an innocence to it. There's a faith that, man, you can do anything. And so it's difficult for people to navigate, on obviously my lane is the faith side of things. 90% of people come to faith in Jesus as a Christian before they turn the age of 18. There's a reason for that. It's difficult when you're in your life and you're 40, 50, 60 years old, and you get kind of jaded, to use your word. And I know it happens in business. I know it happens in, I have friends and stuff. Oh, I'm never getting married. I've seen people get divorced. My parents got divorced. And so they're so jaded towards an institution like that, where I'm like, I would die if I wasn't married. Like, my relationship with my wife is so life-giving, and having my kids, and I couldn't imagine it any other way. But because they're so jaded and, well, so many people get divorced, why even bother? You're just doing it for this reason. And I'm like, you don't understand what it's here for. And I think that's probably true in business and so many other arenas. So you had these interviews with the kids.
Yeah. Well, they were kids. Trust me.
Kids. I'm 37. They're kids. Yeah. With the kids, and what were some of the things that kind of stood out to you that would be the difference?
Well, I was
points?
okay. So the way that I overcome that not getting jaded and having so much evidence of how things
Sure.
are is that you almost have to be sort of like willingly naive,
Yep,
right?
totally
So
agree.
so when I'm looking in their eyes, I'm thinking, why are they so enamored with the potential so much? Like, you're looking at me right now. I haven't offered you anything. There isn't
Yeah.
in it anything. You're looking at me like I have something you want.
Yep.
But what are you looking for? What do you see? And so, like, that thing that you see is the mystery of not knowing. Like, you don't have bills yet. You
Yep.
don't have insurances yet. You don't have family yet. You have all of the things that makes you do something. So literally anything that you do is exciting to you because it's fresh and it's new, and it adds to your potentialities.
Yeah, and I think coming out too, like, everybody thinks and believes they're going to be the best. It's kind of like when you're in second grade and you play basketball for the first time. Everybody's trying to be LeBron James or Michael
Right.
Jordan, like, because I can be that. Like, you remember the commercials when we were kids? I want to be like Mike.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because every kid that's out there is buying Jordans and going out and they wanted to be like Michael Jordan. Somewhere along the line, reality has to be engaged with. Like, I'm 5'10".
You're not.
I'm not Michael
You're
Jordan. Like, statistically, I'm not playing in the NBA. That's
Right.
not happening. Now, I happen to like playing basketball. I can have fun playing basketball. And so there are those intersections where you have to confront reality to some extent. But realistically, there are guys that are 5'6" and 5'7" that play in the NBA. So I might not be Michael Jordan, but to say you can't play in the NBA, you start believing that narrative because you become jaded at some point. So
let me hear these two different conversations. So you take an 18, 19-year-old kid that are coming into college, and they say, hey, if you just give me the opportunity, I'll work for free and I'll wash dishes, I'll do whatever. And then I had one guy that was in his 20s that said, in order for me to have any more minutes at this table, you got to guarantee me $60 million or $60,000, or else I can't entertain this any further.
Yeah.
And that distinction between what this person's willing to trade for an opportunity and what this one is convinced they're not willing to do for anything is stark.
I just had this conversation not too long ago with a mentor, and talking about it. And I can remember in ministry early on, especially with early ministry positions, like, man, you just give me a tent and a nickel, and we're gonna do this thing because this is what I'm built to do.
Yeah.
And all along the way, any job I've had, I've never asked the pay requirements. And money's never been the reason I've taken something or not taken something. For me, it's always been a little more existential. I feel called to it is the phrase I would use. But when we came to Bridge of Hope, Sam and I actually took a $25,000 total pay cut, and we had to find a house to rent. And so it was a total different dynamic. Now, yeah, cost of living was significantly cheaper than New Jersey, so there were some things, but it was a little tight there for the first 8 or 10 months. And for me, I was like, this is it. I'm living the dream. This is amazing. But Sam's like, we can't buy anything. We have to eat rice. Like,
checking her spreadsheet 19 times. Yep.
And getting us into that spot. And it wasn't terrible, but we were also pregnant with Graham. And so we knew we were adding another kid. And we're like, what about medical? So there was a bunch of that weight early on that I was like, man, just give me a nickel and a roll of duct tape and a tent, and like, we'll make this happen. But I have to, you have to tether that. And as you get older, you have responsibilities. Like, I'm responsible for my 4 kids. Now we could talk about what does that mean? Because some people are like, well, I'm responsible for my 4 kids, so my life has to suck and I'm going to stay at this job forever. Well, no, it doesn't have to. But people do that. They sacrifice the dream for the kids, and then the kids become something that you, I'm losing a word here, and I never lose words. You resent. That's the word I was looking for. So the kids end up taking on this resentment. Well, I have to go to work, and dad's got to make the money. And I can't tell you how many times I heard that growing up from my dad. Well, this is how we have stuff. I got to go to work and stuff like that. So don't complain that I'm not here. And always had that negative undertone of resentment because, well, I have to do X or Y or Z, and it's because of you. And I was like, well, no. Like, you should be out there because of your passion. Don't be out there because of me. And I feel like for my kids, part of my responsibility is demonstrating risk, is demonstrating that you can chase your passions and your dreams, and you can step out in ways and you can fail, and it's okay to do that. I think that's a big part of it. And your whole goal as a parent is not just to keep them safe, but we do that, right? As mom and dad, we go, well, I have kids to take care of, I have a house I have to pay for, so therefore I can't pursue, and we limit ourselves, instead of going, well, my ultimate purpose is actually to fulfill this thing over here, and I get to bring my family along with me, and we get to do some things that are really cool and exciting. Yeah, sure, maybe I have to downgrade the house, or maybe I have to navigate something in the short run, but ultimately my mission is my mission.
And you know how I pick apart sometimes in songs and use
Mm,
wrong usage of the words. When I meet somebody who is an adult and they're looking for reasons why things can't happen, and they're seeking out like those can't and won't and shouldn't
yeah,
and
yeah.
whatever. I ask, I'm a jerk when it comes to this, but I ask those pros like, really, you can't really tell me about this can't thing, because I see people over there canning all over the place. What makes you so special that you can't do that one? But the word usage, and I think that part of that
Yep.
jaded process, when you start giving up that there isn't hope, then you start looking for reasons why things can't happen.
Yeah, my dad, my whole life, would say can't means won't. Anytime I would say, oh, I can't do that, he would say, no, you won't do that. I'm like, no, but I'm not strong enough. He goes, no, you won't do it. It's a matter of your will, not a matter of your ability. And every time, it was so frustrating as a kid. Yeah, I can remember it as young as probably Abraham. Dad, I can't. You won't. There's a difference. It may take you a little bit. You may have to figure some things out. You may have to, today, you may have to watch a YouTube video or two. You may have to get around somebody and learn some things. But just because you can't do it right now in this moment, or just because you don't have the ability, you can will yourself to it. I watched a video of Kobe Bryant. I thought this was fantastic. He was being interviewed by Lewis Howes, and he asked him, from 12 years old to 14, up until 12, something like that, Kobe had never really touched a basketball. He didn't start playing basketball till he was like 10, 11, 12, something like that. And from 12 to 14, he went from not playing basketball at all to being the best player in the state. And he asked me, he's like, how did you do that? And he goes, I played 3 hours every day. And he goes, if you think about it, most of the kids even the good kids aren't playing an hour a day. They're playing maybe an hour or two every day during the season, but I played 365 days, 3 hours every day. He was driven by this passion. Now, at 12, you probably told him, you can't be the best player in the state.
Right.
You don't have the skills and stuff like that. Probably correct at that point, but he was able to put a chip on his shoulder, show up and work, and said, I'll show you that I will be the best player. And I love that. Same thing with, you think about guys in other arenas of sports. Tom Brady just retired, and, here he is, pick 199. He barely didn't play a ton in college, and, just got picked up, and then all of a sudden, Drew Bledsoe gets hurt, he steps in and he becomes the greatest quarterback of all time. And everybody looks at that and go, oh, what a Cinderella story. But I guarantee you, because I've heard his stories, I've watched some of his Instagram, TikTok, or whatever, homie works harder than anybody else. And yeah, maybe in the beginning there, he wasn't the Tom Brady that he is now, but didn't limit him.
Right.
He showed up every day earlier, stayed later, worked harder. And I think that's the mindset. And when you have these young people coming out of college, for them, like, what can I do? What do you mean can't?
Right.
It has no definition. But you get somebody, you know what? They've sacrificed themselves in their 30s and 40s, and this is just what we have to do, right? We got to make a
Now,
living.
help me say that word. It's naivete. Now, how do you say that? Naivete. I'm saying it wrong.
Naivety,
Naivety.
naivety,
Naivety. So anyway, so
what'd you put in the water?
so mm, uh, but how we choose to like
Yeah.
be super practical, total
Yeah.
objective, and ones that we feel that we can be stupid about. And it's about reversing that. If you want to take that childlike naivete, say it like that, and that's it. I don't care. That's
So it's naive
naivete.
naivete.
Naivete. It sounds so class.
Oh man.